Star Wars is known for its crazy superweapons, with the Death Star being one of the most iconic designs in all of sci-fi. On the big screen, we have seen the Death Star 1 and 2, as well as the super hyped up Death Star Starkiller base in the new trilogy. When exploring Legends, we find that these were not the first superweapons in the galaxy, nor were they close to being the most powerful. This video will explore every single Star Wars superweapon from both Legends and Canon. This will be one of my longer videos, so as usual grab a drink and a snack before we begin. I've roughly ordered this list from least to most powerful, so make sure to stick around until the end to find out about the most powerful superweapon, and spoilers, you've probably never even heard of it. The electro-proton bomb, created by Republic engineers, essentially acted as a massive EMP grenade. It was meant to be dropped from bombers onto the front lines, releasing a powerful electromagnetic pulse shockwave capable of crippling or eliminating any type of droid or vehicle within the explosion's radius. When the Confederacy of Independent Systems sent a huge invading force to Malastare to capture its fuel deposits, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine approved the deployment of the electro-proton bomb. To defeat the huge army of battle droids that had invaded their home world, the local Dugs consented to its detonation. Although the bomb was effective in eradicating the Separatist menace, some were concerned that it would have a negative impact on the delicate balance of Malastare's ecology. As most of you will already know, this device had an unforeseen consequence. It awoke one of the ancient Zillo beasts that were long believed to be extinct, although that's a story for another day. A similar technology was developed thousands of years before the Clone Wars during the Old Republic Cold War era. Known as null cannons, they work by launching energy bursts that rendered hostile technology like starships entirely inoperable. A prototype was present among the Republic naval fleet on Hoth before it crashed during a battle with the Sith Empire. Another superweapon that was developed to disrupt machinery and droids was the metal crystal phase shifter. Developed within the secretive Imperial superweapons facility within the Maw cluster of black holes, this weapon could turn any metal into crystalline powder. When ships or droids entered its disruptive shield, large cracks would appear and eventually the whole structure would disintegrate. This weapon was able to bypass shields, allowing it to quite easily destroy a large Star Destroyer with very little effort. However, like many of the other Maw superweapons we will discuss later on in this video, it never got past the prototype stage. The prototype was destroyed in the Battle of the Maw, preventing it from falling into the hands of the Imperial Remnant. However, this technology was eventually integrated into the Maw irregular fleet and helped the Jedi defeat the newly turned Jacen Solo during the Second Battle of Fondor. A similar but more powerful weapon was created during the Clone Wars. Known as the Malevolence, this flagship was a modified subjugated class heavy cruiser. It was equipped with 2 twin ion pulse guns, which once fired, the resulting wave would travel long distances and cripple any starship that it met with. Following the immobilization of the ship with the ion guns, about 500 turbo lasers were unleashed and utterly destroyed the opposing cruiser. This massive heavy cruiser served as Grievous's flagship at the beginning of the Clone Wars. However, after Anakin tampered with the ship's navicomputer, the entire ship crashed into the dead moon of Antar. However, the Malevolent sister ship was even more deadly. Known as the Devastation, this heavy class cruiser was even larger than the Malevolence. As well as housing twin ion cannons like the Malevolence, it also housed a single forward-facing ion beam cannon powered by force-based crystals. This cannon was thought to be able to destroy small moons and ravage the surface of larger planets. This superweapon was taken over by a treacherous Night Sister named Sai Surku, who had betrayed Ventress and Dooku. She tried to absorb the power of the force-based crystals, believing that this would give her immense power. However, in reality, it was too much energy for her to contain, and she accidentally destroyed both herself and the Devastation. A lesser-known superweapon was known as the Gravity Gun. Developed by Cronal, the right-hand man of Palpatine. These destructive weapons used powerful gravity bombs that would literally shake the opponent's fleet to pieces. However, this technology has only been seen used on one occasion. The arc pulse generator was a Mandalorian superweapon designed by Sabine Wren for the Galactic Empire. The weapon was cruelly dubbed the Duchess after the late pacifist Duchess Satine Kryze, who ruled Mandalore during the Clone Wars. The weapon was designed to target the Beskar alloy used in the Mandalorian armor. Beskar was notable for being able to withstand blows from lightsabers and was often believed to be near indestructible. The weapon would superheat the alloy in the armor, resulting in the disintegration of the individual wearing it. However, it could also be recalibrated to target other materials, such as the plastoid found in Stormtrooper armor. Sabine Wren soon realised that the Empire intended to use the arc pulse generator on her own people, and attempted to sabotage it. She was unsuccessful in this attempt, and defected from the Empire, joining the rebel forces. Later, a civil war erupted on Mandalore after Clan Wren rebelled against Clan Saxon, the ruling clan at the time that was allied with the Empire. Clan Saxon obtained the arc pulse generator from the Empire, and tested it out on Clan Wren. After Sabine Wren's sabotage on the weapon, it was not working at full capacity, and so Governor Saxon planned to capture Wren and force her to fix it. The rebels attacked the Saxon Star Destroyer, with Sabine boarding the ship herself along with the strike team to destroy the weapon. However, Sabine and Bo-Katan Kryze, leader of the Mandalorian resistance, would be captured by Saxon upon locating the weapon. He threatened to kill Bo-Katan if Wren did not fix the arc pulse generator. Sabine began working on the machine, and soon she claimed to have amplified its output. In reality, she had recalibrated the superweapon to target Stormtrooper armor, and when Saxon activated it, he killed his own Imperial troops. Wren then destroyed the weapon's core, causing it to explode, leading to the destruction of the Star Destroyer as Wren and the Resistance escaped. Next we have the Eye of Palpatine, a superweapon that was designed by the Emperor himself. This lethal battleship was the Galactic Empire's first operational superweapon. It was regarded as a Star Destroyer and a battle moon. As part of its covert origin, the spacecraft was designed to resemble an asteroid, complete with impact craters designed with Palpatine's direct assistance. The reason for this was to evade detection by hostile spacecraft and systems, but others also claimed that this was done to keep its creation a secret owing to potential outrage, or that it was transformed from a large space rock to save on material resources. It was said that the battle moon exceeded the power of an entire fleet of Star Destroyers, and could quite easily ravage the surface of a planet. Its arsenal featured at least 4 pairs of ventral turbo laser batteries, an 8-battery ring of forward-focused turbo lasers, and its primary weapon, a laser targeting beam emitter positioned in the middle of the forward-facing turbo laser battery ring. The Ascendant Spear, like so many other capital ships throughout history, possessed a dagger-like hull form. The ship was one of the Sith Empire's 15 biggest capital ships. However, this isn't particularly remarkable, being dwarfed by many later ships. The Ascendant Spear was a superweapon due to its unusual abilities. Darth Mekis designed the spacecraft to be a perfect marriage of organic flesh and technology. Darth Karad, Darth Malgus' former apprentice, communed with and commanded the ship directly through bionic implants, allowing it to exceed its Class 0.5 hyperdrive rating and improve the capabilities and efficacy of its weaponry and other systems to faultless accuracy. This allowed the ship to travel faster even than the Millennium Falcon, despite its large size. Therefore, this ship could rapidly be deployed, wreak havoc upon the enemy, and then retreat before the enemy even had a chance to fire back. It was noted that the Ascendant Spear took out numerous Republic fleets single-handedly, although how true this really is has been lost to legends. Next up, we have the Ionic Ring ship. A superweapon developed in the Maw, the Ionic Ring ship consisted of several ion beams that can manipulate and change a planet's weather patterns. This ship was initially created by Professor Ren Vols, who believed it could act as a climate stabilizer, benefiting many millions across the galaxy. However, the Empire had other ideas, and instead employed it to unleash devastating storms on rebel-held worlds. Fortunately, the professor who invented the Iron Ring was able to destroy it, but the Empire was able to use the plans to create a new superweapon, the Orbital Nightcloak, which we will discuss in just a moment. Next up, we have the Silencer, a superweapon developed by the reconstituted Sith Empire during the Old Republic era. Built upon the frame of a Hara-class dreadnought, the middle of the ship was converted into a mega laser cannon. Unlike other superweapon lasers, this mega laser had a rapid rate of fire, with every shot delivering enough power to decimate a Star Destroyer. The Silencer could quite easily destroy several enemy capital ships before quickly retreating. However, almost all of the Silencer ships were lost during the Eternal Empire's rapid invasion of the galaxy. The Badger was more of a defensive weapon, effectively operating as a supercharged planetary defensive system. If activated, the entire electricity grid of the planet would be redirected to the weapon, destroying entire fleets of Star Destroyers with its massive turbo laser cannons. However, this system was never activated, as it was feared that it would drain the planet's power grid to such an extent it would render it unstable, effectively plunging the planet into the Dark Ages. The Kamari battleship was created by the Kamari Empire in around 10,000 BBY, in what is now the Outer Rim region. Named after the Empire's ruler, Val Kumari, these battleships contained a mass driver that allowed them to propel asteroids at high speeds, which could then lay waste to a planet's surface. Even though the Kumari Empire was swiftly overthrown by the Galactic Republic, the Kamari battleship design remained a threat until strong planetary defenses were developed, and the ship design was borrowed by many other starships, including the Republic Navy itself. The Malachor superweapon was powered by a giant Kyber crystal, similar to the ones that would later be used in the Death Star. Thousands of years before the Galactic Republic fell to Palpatine's machinations, the Jedi and Sith fought for control over the galaxy. One devastating battle took place on the planet of Malachor. Launching an assault on the Sith Temple, Jedi forces hoped to topple a powerful Sith witch, tipping the balance of the conflict away from the dark side of the Force. However, the Jedi didn't know that the temple wasn't a place of worship but was also a superweapon. During the battle, the weapon was activated, turning every single person inside the temple to stone. Both Jedi and Sith alike were affected. No one was spared. The event came to be known as the Great Scourge of Malachor, and became famous as a cautionary tale for young Jedi in training, as well as the source of Darth Maul's hatred for the Jedi. Long before the Clone Wars, Sith Lord Darth Momin constructed an unnamed superweapon in his quest to be worthy of the dark side of the Force. It had the ability to burn a city to the ground, but Momin had a more creative scheme for the superweapon. He intended to pour the Force into the weapon's engine and freeze the terrified expressions of the victims in time. Darth Momin stationed his superweapon by a city he planned to execute. However, the Jedi infiltrated the device. Conscious of their presence, Momin blundered the attack on the city and completely destroyed it before he could freeze its population. He lost control of the energy he was wielding and incinerated himself. When the Jedi found him, all that was left was his charred body and his mask, which entrapped his consciousness. Later, while describing the event to Darth Vader, Momin's consciousness referred to the superweapon as a failure. The next superweapon is the Starflash, a device that could fire a large blast of light-speed tachyonic energy at a star, causing a far more powerful blast to bounce back. An unknown alien species created the device over 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and at some point came into the possession of the Chiss Ascendancy. Many hundreds of years later, the Chiss Ascendancy was attacked by an unidentified enemy. Almost all planets in the system had been conquered when the Chiss remembered the Starflash. A small squad took the superweapon and fired at the planet's sun. The resulting blast annihilated the enemy's fleet, as well as the Starflash and its crew. As a consequence of this, the sun did dim significantly over the next few decades, ultimately forcing the Chiss to relocate underground. Over 7,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, a technologically advanced species created an enormous artificial sphere around a star called Iokath. This unknown species designed many weapons with the power harnessed from Iokath's core, including a superweapon known as the Old Gods or the Six Gods. Originally created by the Iokath architects, they were 6 Titan droids designed to pacify, subjugate, and destroy entire civilizations. These gods likely killed billions or even trillions in their lifetime. They came to a halt when civil war erupted on Iokath. Eventually, one side set the Old Gods on the other, ultimately leading to the eradication of all organic life on the Dyson Sphere. With this, the gods would enter a deactivated state. During the Battle of Iokath, roughly 2,000 years later, the Sith Empress attempted to awaken and control one of the Old Gods for her cause. This resulted very quickly in her demise. The opposition, the Eternal Alliance, managed to subdue the Titan with much of their firepower. Realizing the great threat that the remaining 5 could pose to the galaxy, they decided to destroy the sleeping gods. Next, we have a lesser-known superweapon developed by the Separatists. According to Galactic Republic databases, this unnamed superweapon was capable of cloaking entire fleets of starships, preventing enemies from detecting them even on radar. Fortunately for the Republic, it seems as though this weapon never got past the experimental phase of development. Next, we have the Omega Frost, one of the most unique superweapons on this list. While most superweapons cause mass destruction through lasers and explosions, this weapon froze a target to death. This superweapon was used in the Empire's unsuccessful campaign to defeat the Rebel Alliance. The Omega Frost was designed to flash freeze any moisture-containing object, particularly life forms, that happened to be positioned between the 2 carefully placed conductor towers. Because practically every substance in the cosmos included some moisture, the weapon could be used in any setting, even in space. The superweapon worked by decreasing the temperature to absolute zero through the use of various kinds of force fields and electromagnetic rays. In theory, this superweapon could be scaled up massively, allowing the wielder of the weapon to freeze entire planets and even star systems. The Hyperspace Nullifier is perhaps the oldest superweapon on this list. Developed by an advanced alien species millions of years before the Clone Wars, it was able to dramatically manipulate hyperspace. Hyperspace was the lifeblood of the galaxy, allowing resources or armies to travel vast distances at over 100,000 times the speed of light. However, this superweapon allowed the user to move hyperspace lanes away from planets or systems. This allowed them to effectively lock entire planets or fleets from entering hyperspace, or create ultra-quick new hyperlanes for their own forces. The Empire discovered this weapon and saw it as a useful tool during the Galactic Civil War. However, Han Solo was able to destroy it along with the planet it was on before it was used. The Visual Electromagnetic Intensifier was an Imperial weapon consisting of several satellites. These satellites would orbit a planet and focus electromagnetic radiation, effectively cooking the planet. In Canon, a very similar system was used during Operation Cinder. This was an orbital bombardment campaign designed to destroy the Empire's military resources in the event of the Emperor's death. This plan was meant to purge the weak from the Empire while preventing important planets and resources from falling into the New Republic's hands. However, this operation largely resulted in just a string of Imperial defections and greatly weakened what remained of the Imperial remnant. A similar weapon was the Orbital Nightcloak. Also consisting of hundreds of satellites, it engulfed an entire planet and prevented any sunlight from reaching the planet's surface. However, this superweapon was extremely flawed. First, it took a long time to place all of the satellites into place. And more importantly, the whole system would shut down if just one of these satellites was shot down, rendering the entire design pretty impractical. Next, we have the Myrrh Talisman, an ancient amulet created by the founders of the Order of the Sith Lords. I'll be making a dedicated video to the various dark side and Sith artifacts in the coming months, so make sure to subscribe with the notifications on if you haven't already. However, I've decided to include the Myrrh Talisman in this list as it's particularly destructive. The talisman granted any Force user who possessed it the ability to transform any biological being into a terrifying zombie-like creature known as a Rakghoul. A notable secondary ability was that it could stop the wielder from aging. However, like many other dark-side imbued objects, it would slowly take over the minds of whoever wielded it, as it was possessed by the spirit of the ancient Sith, Canis Mur. Next up is the Mass Shadow Generator, a Republic superweapon created on the orders from Revan during the Mandalorian War. This superweapon drew upon the mass shadows of planetary bodies and other celestial objects. It would then use gravitational anomalies to unleash devastation upon the planet, as well as any ship in close proximity to it. The resultant gravity vortex was enough to crush and fracture the core of a planet, with the gravitational anomalies remaining on the world for years after. This weapon was famously used by Revan to destroy the Mandalorian fleet, ultimately ending the Mandalorian Wars. However, it also destroyed a large portion of the Republic fleet, with many scholars believing that this was the point in which Revan turned to the dark side. As a result of the Mass Shadow Generator's activation, the world was transformed into a dark side nexus, which would inadvertently create the infamous Darth Nihilus. The Dark Reaper was an ancient superweapon created during the Great Hyperspace War, the very first war between the Sith Empire and the Republic. This weapon of mass destruction worked by harvesting surrounding force energy from biological life, similar to the force drain ability used by Darth Nihilus. Anything that hadn't been killed by harvesting their life energies would then be hit by an immense burst of heat, capable of destroying entire cities. This weapon was used several times by the Sith throughout the Old Republic era. However, its most notable use was during the Clone Wars. Count Dooku used this device to kill millions during an attack on Mon Calamari. However, Force users could learn how to withstand the effects of the Dark Reaper's Force Harvest. This allowed Anakin Skywalker to lead an attack on the superweapon, and it was eventually destroyed. The Infant of Shar was a holy figurine sculpted by the inhabitants of Salot many years before the Clone Wars. The Salots venerated the idol as both a vital sacred symbol and a dangerous weapon. The Infant of Shar was in fact a reservoir of Force energy that, when unleashed, caused a disturbance in the Force, large enough to tear an entire planet apart. The idol's capacity for devastation made it highly sought after, and it eventually became a legend among members of the criminal underworld. Just before the Clone Wars, a political extremist stole this superweapon, attempting to destroy Coruscant. However, just before he could destroy the Yuka Monopolis, he was stopped by Jango Fett, Zun Westel, and Jedi Master Yarl Poof. The Shadow Arsenal was the name of a Republic superweapon developed during the Great Galactic War. Developed by a secretive group of scientists, they hoped that by creating such a powerful weapon, they could deter any future attack on the Republic. The project resulted in a stockpile of interplanetary missiles. Each missile was equipped with a hyperdrive, a cloaking device, and a massive payload capable of destroying entire continents. The scientists eventually had a change of heart when they realised it would fail to prevent war and would only lead to needless deaths of countless civilians. Thus, the project was disbanded and the Shadow Arsenal was hidden away. The two-wave Gravshock, also known as the Gravshock device or Planet Buster, was an Imperial superweapon that can manipulate the gravity of the target planet. Housed within a torpedo sphere battle station, the precursor to the Death Star, it could cause the gravitational field of a planet to fluctuate wildly. This would cause the planet's cities to either be crushed or destroyed by devastating floods and earthquakes and violent weather. However, there was a serious flaw in its design, in that it would cause the torpedo sphere housing the device to be pulled into the planet. This ultimately resulted in the destruction of the superweapon at its own hands. The Deathmark laser superweapon was composed of an orbiting platform that could fire extremely precise beams of super concentrated energy at a single individual. This lethal beam could pierce practically any building or shield, rendering escape impossible. It was hoped that by using this superweapon, the Republic could prevent the use of large armies, as they could quickly take out key Sith leaders during the Cold War. However, this weapon eventually fell into the hands of the Sith Empire and was used for numerous nefarious purposes, including the creation of a much more powerful superweapon we will discuss later on. Another superweapon created by the Republic during this time was the Planet Prison. The Planet Prison was designed to charge a planet's atmosphere with an iron pulse, transforming the entire planet into a colossal iron cannon. Any craft that tried to enter the stratosphere would immediately be disabled. Developed by the same Republic scientists who created the Planet Prison and the Deathmark laser, the shock drum was perhaps the most destructive. When triggered, it produced tremendous ultrasonic vibrations that rendered droids as well as other electronics completely useless. The shock drum's vibrations became stronger the longer it was kept on, eventually causing major seismic groundquakes and the death of organic life as their molecules literally vibrated apart. To the horror of Republic scientists, they determined that over a long enough amount of time, it would cause the core of the planet to destabilize, eventually leading it to hit a critical mass and shatter apart. Therefore, the Republic decided to shut down the project, but unfortunately, the plans for this device would fall into the hands of the Sith. The 3 previously mentioned superweapons were stolen by the Sith, and the technology combined to produce a superweapon that was far more destructive and perhaps a little over the top. The weapon's initial stage derived from the planet prism, ionized a planet's atmosphere, therefore preventing any escape. The second stage, based on the Death Mark laser, ignited the planet's ionized atmosphere, transforming the target's very air into a firestorm. The laser would also pierce the planet's crust, allowing the last step to begin. The Desolator would then disrupt the target world's planet core with a prolonged series of strong seismic vibrations using technology derived from the shock drum weapon. These tremors would essentially rip the world apart in a short span of time, making this superweapon a very valuable asset of the Sith Empire. Next up, we have the Yogun's core tactic used by the Yuzong Vong. The Vong use a plethora of biological weapons, all with devastating potential. However, this was likely the most destructive. The Dovin Basil, an organism capable of controlling gravity fields, was used for this technique. The Vong would discreetly implant a Dovin Basil on the target planet, and order the organism to use gravity manipulation to attach itself to the planet's core as well as its moon. The Dovin Basil then drew the moon closer to the planet until its orbit degraded and it collided with it. In Legends, the Vong used this technique against the moon of Sun Pedal, leading to the death of Chewbacca. The plane changers were large railguns that accelerated asteroids to planet-wrecking velocities. Developed by the Hutt Empire 15,000 years before the Clone Wars, the development of these weapons eventually led to the Hutt Cataclysms, whereby the Hutts destroyed a large portion of their own empire through civil war. This resulted in a philosophical shift in the Hutt thinking, whereby they decided to dominate the galaxy economically rather than through brute force and superweapons. A similar weapon known as Hammer Station was developed by the Republic. Like the plane changer, it would grab asteroids with its powerful tractor beams before shooting them out at relativistic speeds. However, just like the Hutts before them, the Republic realized the destructive potential of these weapons and decommissioned them. Next up, we have the Conqueror, an Imperial superweapon that used Death Star technology. Essentially, an Imperial Star Destroyer with a super laser attached to the front, it was reportedly able to destroy small moons and even planets. However, its smaller size meant that it was likely far less powerful than the Death Star, and just like the Death Star, the Conqueror would be destroyed soon after its creation by a small group of rebels. Next up, we have the Death Star prototype. The prototype Death Star had a basic duosteel structure with a reactor core, super laser, and thrusters. Its super laser could only damage a planet's core, although it would leave it uninhabitable. The targeting system on the Death Star prototype was likewise never calibrated, reducing its accuracy significantly when compared to later Death Stars. Housed in the Maw installation, it was eventually destroyed after being lured into a black hole contained within the Maw. The Galaxy Gun was a particularly destructive superweapon commissioned by the reborn Emperor Palpatine approximately 10 years after the destruction of the first Death Star. This superweapon was a cylindrical space station 7 kilometers long and was constructed over Biss. It was capable of launching devastating missiles armed with particle disintegrator warheads that could annihilate an entire planet. Each of these missiles could traverse hyperspace at extremely high speeds, while remaining difficult to detect until they struck. Each projectile was well armoured and armed with ion cannons, turbo lasers and a powerful shield, preventing it from being stopped. The payload contained a particle disintegrator that would set off a chain reaction, converting all of the mass of the planet into energy. For those of you not well versed on E=mc², that's enough energy to dwarf even some of the largest of stars. The battle station itself was equipped with thrusters and a hyperdrive, as well as numerous other defences. However, the Galaxy Gun wasn't very fast or manoeuvrable, and this would eventually prove to be its undoing. R2-D2 took control of the Emperor's starship, the Eclipse II, and set a course to crash directly into the Galaxy Gun. The resultant explosion destroyed both the Emperor's flagship and the superweapon, and it also led to a stray projectile to fall onto the reborn Emperor's throne world of Biss, obliterating the planet as well as a sizable portion of his fleet. The Darksaber was a Hutt superweapon that was possibly named after the Mandalorian saber of the same name. The Darksaber was basically a budget Death Star, built by the crime lord Durger the Hutt a few years after the dissolution of the Empire. Designed by the same scientist who made the Death Star, this battle station was essentially a kilometers-long super laser encased in durasteel. The Darksaber had several advantages over the Death Star, namely its slightly more powerful super laser and increased maneuverability. However, it ultimately ranks lower than the Death Star on this list as a result of corners being cut to reduce the build price. Its hull was made from low-quality durasteel armor, and the entire battle station ran on outdated computer cores. Next up, we have the DS-1 Orbital Battle Station, known to the citizens of the galaxy as the Imperial Planetary Ore Extractor, and better known to us as the Death Star. It was a massive battle station constructed under Palpatine's rule to maintain order through the threat of planetary annihilation. Costing an estimated 1.5 trillion credits, this small moon-sized battle station took 20 years to build and was completed shortly before the Battle of Yavin. Geonosian Industries produced the initial technical designs for the Death Star, then referred to as the ultimate weapon. In 19 BBY, Darth Sidious ordered Geonosian builders to commence construction above their homeworld. With a diameter of 120 kilometers, the Death Star consisted of two hemispheres separated by a kilometer-wide trench at the equator for docking bays. The northern hemisphere featured the station's main weapon, a terrifying super laser powerful enough to destroy planets in a single shot. The super laser's power settings were adjustable to discharge the appropriate amount of energy for the destruction of naval vessels and planets alike. On average, a vessel-destroying shot could be launched every minute, while planet-destroying blasts could only be shot about once a day. The maximum setting of the super laser was only fired once before its destruction at the hands of the rebel forces. It was aimed at the planet Alderaan, Princess Leia's homeworld. The entire population of 2 billion was killed in a single instant. Despite spending so much time and credits on developing the superweapon, the Imperials failed to notice the security flaw which the rebels would take advantage of. A 2-meter wide exhaust shaft that led directly to the main reactor was the perfect size for Luke Skywalker to shoot 2 proton torpedoes into, and set off a chain reaction that would annihilate the base. Next up, we have the Tarkin, which you might consider the Death Star 1.5. Modelled after the first Death Star and named after the recently deceased Grand Moff Tarkin, this battle station's primary weapon was an ionic cannon super laser. We aren't exactly sure if this laser was as powerful as the Death Star, but it certainly came close. The only known firing of this laser blew open the core of an entire planet. But this planet's core happened to be made of stygium crystals, a very powerful lightsaber crystal that allowed its wielder to become invisible. We spoke about that in much more depth over in this video, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. It is possible that these crystals prevented the planet's total destruction, which would mean that the Tarkin is in fact as powerful as the Death Star, only it did have a few major advantages. Unlike the Death Star, it also housed a powerful defensive shield generator, and did not have a pesky exhaust port. However, this did not mean it was without weaknesses. Princess Leia was able to rewire the Tarkin super laser in on itself, leading to its self-destruction after a failed attempt to destroy the rebel fleet. Shortly before Luke destroyed the Death Star, Palpatine actually ordered the creation of a second Death Star to combat the rebels and assert the Empire's dominance over the galaxy. In canon, both Death Stars were designed by Geonosians and the Imperial Special Weapons Group, of which Galen Erso was a part of. However, in Legends, the designer was an engineer and architect known as Bevel Lemelisk. Lemelisk was executed for the first battle station's shortcomings. However, Palpatine had him cloned so that he could redesign the superweapon and eliminate the flaws of the previous version. The Death Star 2 would be significantly larger than its predecessor, with a diameter of 160 kilometers, housing thousands more turbo lasers for increased defense. The most crucial change that Lemelisk made to the new Death Star was regarding the thermal exhaust port that led to the destruction of the Death Star 1. The exhaust is a necessary component to release heat energy from the main reactor of the battle station. But this was clearly a major security flaw. To overcome this, Lemillis covered the new station's surface with millions of millimeter-wide exhaust ports to expel heat. The Death Star 2's main armament was an improved version of the superlaser seen on the first Death Star. The Death Star 2 contained 3 hypermatter reactors, 2 of which were dedicated solely to the superlaser. In comparison, Death Star 1 had just 1 reactor to power the superlaser as well as the rest of the station. The new superlaser was more powerful, more efficient, and had a higher rate of fire, whereas the Death Star 1 could only deliver a maximum power shot of once per day. The Death Star 2 could fully recharge in just 3 minutes. By the time the Empire began working on the second Death Star, methods of faster construction had been developed for a much quicker production timeline. Although only partially completed, the Death Star 2 was operational just 4 years after construction began. It was at this time, above the forest moon of Endor, that the rebels would attack the battle station. As the project was unfinished, it was being protected by an energy shield projected from the moon's surface. A squad of rebels, alongside the local Ewoks, destroyed the shield on the ground, allowing Lando Calrissian to destroy the Death Star 2. The next one isn't a single superweapon, but rather a weaponization of common technology. Collisions during hyperspace travel are catastrophic events that can decimate planets. One could unleash a great amount of destructive power on a target, given that the output of the reactors on many naval vessels rivaled that or surpassed the power of a star, and much of this was used during hyperspace travel. Even if a planet had its planetary shielding active at the moment of a hyperspace collision, the fallout alone could potentially kill millions. During the Clone Wars, one of the most well-known hyperspace incidents occurred. A battlecruiser collided with a separatist planet, thereby shattering it into pieces. The pre-Republic era Quar species of Dathomir developed an ancient network of structures known as the Infinity Gates. Utilizing the Force, or as the Quar called it, the power of the cosmos, the Infinity Gates allowed for instantaneous travel throughout the galaxy. The gates could also emit devastating bursts of energy to anywhere in the galaxy, known as Infinity Waves. Such a wave was capable of sucking an entire planet and its moons into infinity, ending all life and obliterating all matter in the process. The Quar sealed off these gates as their power began to wane, and set Waffleworm Guardians to protect them. Despite this, in 31 BBY, the Night Sisters accessed an Infinity Gate on Dathomir to learn its secrets, and sought to send an Infinity Wave to Coruscant. However, this plan was thwarted by Jedi Knight Quinlan Vos. Vos managed to reverse the wave through the Infinity Gate's control station, resulting in its destruction. Next up, we have Starkiller Base, a First Order military base located in the unknown regions on the ice planet of Ilum. Starkiller Base housed a large superweapon that would release a beam of energy capable of wiping out an entire star system halfway across the galaxy. Starkiller Base was seen as an evolution of the Death Star, being more than twice the size and magnitudes more powerful. The weapon was powered by a sort of dark energy known as quintessence. An array of collectors on one side of the planet would use a star as a power source to harness quintessence, which would then be stored in the planet's core. A thermal oscillator alongside the planet's natural magnetic field prevented this energy from escaping. When the base charged up, it would eventually extinguish the star that it was drawing power from, with this probably giving the base its name. The superweapon was only fired once. The target was Hosnian Prime, home capital of the New Republic in Canon, as well as 4 other planets in the Hosnian system. The planets were obliterated, the New Republic's fleet was decimated, and the inhabitants were forever lost. This event became known as the Hosnian Cataclysm. World Devastators, sometimes referred to as World Smashers or City Eaters, were giant vessels employed by the reborn Palpatine's Dark Empire. They used tractor beams to tear apart planets. It is difficult to measure if the power of the World Devastators eclipsed that of the Death Star, but they were definitely more efficient. The Death Star could simply destroy worlds, but the World Devastators could recycle the material resources of the target world. These resources could be used to power the machine for further planetary demolitions, as well as to send out onboard foundries that churned out everything from droids to medium-sized cruisers. Each World Devastator was controlled by a central droid brain, responsible for executive tasks. Alongside the droid brain was a small sentient crew that could monitor production and navigational systems. World Devastators were heavily used in the Battle of Mon Calamari by the reborn Emperor Palpatine. The first Death Star had once intended to destroy the ocean world, though with the destruction of the battle station and its successor, it seemed as though Mon Calamari was safe. However, when Palpatine began his assault, the planet became the World Devastators' first target. The World Devastators destroyed the floating cities and the shipyards, feeding their foundries in preparation for a New Republic counterattack. Admiral Akbar was leading the defense of his homeworld, yet it seemed that all firepower was useless against the Devastators' unrelenting march. As all hope was lost, the Devastators halted. Luke Skywalker had infiltrated the upper echelons of the Imperial Command and was able to shut down the Devastators. While their consumption of Mon Calamari had ended, their onboard foundries were still churning out TIE fighters and Wave Walkers. With his new rank of Supreme Commander of the Imperial Forces, Skywalker was able to smuggle a plethora of Imperial data into the hands of the Rebellion. With this, the Rebels generated a virus to hijack the central droid brains of the Devastators. The virus worked flawlessly, and the Devastators began devouring one another. However, at least one Devastator was captured by the New Republic, but after public backlash, these vessels were destroyed. The Sunraiser was a space station that enabled the creation of other superweapons. During the Cold War era, Darth Mechas developed these machines to encircle a star and harness its matter and energy. Only one was ever completed, located in the Vesla system. It provided far more resources than strip mining a planet, and enough energy to power an entire civilization. During its lifespan, the Sunraiser was able to create weapons such as the previously discussed Silencer and Ascendant Spear, as well as our next weapon, the Gauntlet. Like the Sunraiser, not much is known about the Gauntlet, but we do know that it was a lightspeed cannon that could eliminate targets in hyperspace. As far as we're aware, the Gauntlet was never used before being destroyed. The Republic fleet engaged the Gauntlet and the Sunraiser in battle, infiltrating and sabotaging its systems and ultimately causing the demise of these two powerful superweapons. Next up, we have the Star Forge, a personal favourite of mine. The Star Forge was created over 30,000 years before the Battle of Yavin by the Rakatan Infinite Empire. Collecting matter and energy from the star using the dark side of the Force, the Star Forge could create an unlimited army of starships, droids, and weaponry. The Star Forge was, however, a double-edged sword. While it was an exceptionally useful tool to conquer the galaxy with, it began to feed off the Rakatan's dark side desire for domination. Over the course of thousands of years, the Star Forge corrupted the Rakata until in 25,000 BBY, the Rakatan Infinite Empire erupted in civil war, ultimately destroying them. After thousands of years of feeding off the Rakatan darkside users, the station had become semi-sentient and was able to repair itself using residual darkside energy, allowing it to exist for thousands of years without any maintenance. When the station came into the possession of Darth Malak, it was shown to be able to heal the user of the Forge. By placing captured Jedi in a lifeless state, the Star Forge would feed off their Force energy and channel their power into the individual controlling it. Not exactly a super weapon ability, but I thought it was a cool bit of trivia that doesn't really get mentioned often when talking about the Star Forge. Not having much armor or weaponry itself, and heavily relying upon the ships it produced for protection, the Forge was eventually destroyed in the Battle of Rakata Prime, with the combined turbo lasers of multiple vessels causing its orbital stabilizers to malfunction, destroying the station. In the aftermath, the Jedi were extremely paranoid of the galaxy finding out about the Rakata, fearing it would incite panic. They therefore decided to quarantine the Rakatan system in which it resided, and so the Star Forge was forgotten by the wider galaxy. Next up, we have the Corsair, a relatively small ship which you may not expect to find this high up on the list. But this ship was equipped with powerful force-enhancing Sith crystals that could manipulate stars. At just 215 meters in length, it was fairly nimble compared to a lot of other vessels on this list. The command deck was where most of the ship's 25 crew members worked. It was also where the Sith crystals were located. They held immense, almost unimaginable power. The scope of the crystal's abilities ranged from creating a solar flare to ripping out the core from a star. Yet, the great power of these crystals meant they were extremely hard to control, even by the most well-trained individuals. Next up is the Cosmic Turbine, a colossal device with the ability to manipulate gravity on a large scale through the use of hyperspace tractor beams. An ancient species known as the Celestials were responsible for creating this device somewhere before 30,000 BBY. There is evidence that the cosmic turbine was utilized by the Celestials to build the Voltar system, planets and suns included. A number of Dark Jedi moved to the Voltar system in 4000 BBY, after being expelled from Coruscant during the Third Great Schism. There, they found the Celestials' machine, naming it the Cosmic Turbine. Seeking revenge against the Jedi Order, the Dark Jedi activated the device in an attempt to cause mass destruction. However, control over the machine was far beyond their capabilities. By accidentally targeting their own coordinates, the entire Voltar system was destroyed, along with the Cosmic Turbine and the Dark Jedi. The Sun Crusher, developed in secret by the Empire, was a near indestructible superweapon no larger than a starfighter. The Sun Crusher was equipped with 11 energy resonance torpedoes. When fired, they would travel at near light speed to the nearest star. The torpedo would cause the star's core to destabilize, turning it into a supernova, destroying a whole star system of planets. If necessary, the torpedoes could also be launched at any starship, delivering a payload so large it would instantly obliterate it. The Sun Crusher was also clad in quantum crystalline armor. This material was so strong that even when fired upon by the Death Star's prototype super laser, it was not destroyed. Han Solo even rammed it with an Imperial Star Destroyer, with the Sun Crusher taking no damage. Built in the Morse system with funds from Grand Moff Tarkin, the Sun Crusher was fortunately not finished until after the destruction of the Empire. However, after being discovered by Han Solo and Chewbacca in 11 ABY, the Sun Crusher was placed in the poisonous gas giant Yavin. But a young Jedi named Kip Duron, under the influence of the ancient Sith Lord Exar Kun, would seek out the Sun Crusher, using it to destroy the Cauldron Nebula and an Imperial remnant fleet. After Exar Kun had been defeated, Kip flew the Sun Crusher into a black hole during the Battle of the Maw, destroying it for good. Created over 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, Centerpoint Station was an ancient artifact over 350 kilometers long. It was so large and old that almost 1 million people resided in its reactor core, using its glow point for warmth just like planet dwellers would use a star. 18 years after the Battle of Yavin, the station was discovered to be capable of pulling stars and planets through hyperspace using a giant tractor beam. This could be used for peaceful purposes. For instance, the Corellian system is speculated to have been created thousands of years before the Galactic Republic using this station. However, such tremendous power could also be used for ill intent. Its immensely powerful tractor beam allowed the user to crush planets, atomize whole fleets of starships, and make stars go supernova. And what's more, it could do all of this from hundreds of light years away. The station was only used a few times in recorded history, and largely resulted in great harm to the user of the station due to the lack of understanding of its immense complexity. On one occasion, Han Solo's cousin, Thraken Sal Solo, attempted to use the station against the invading Yuzongbong fleet. However, the coordinates were off, so it did not only destroy half of the Yuzongbong's fleet, but the vast majority of the Allied fleet as well. On another occasion, a crazed and resentful technician attempted to use the station to destroy Coruscant, setting the coordinates to 000. Unknown to him, the coordinates had been changed so that 000 would target the station itself. And so, like the Cosmic Turbine, this celestial created superweapon was destroyed through sheer idiocy. Our penultimate superweapon is a powerful, sentient Sith artifact considered to be one of the most dangerous objects in the galaxy, known as the Dark Staff. It was created thousands of years before the Clone Wars by an unknown member of the Sith Order. The staff was not Force imbued, however, yet it could feed off the Force. It could suck the Force essence out of living beings, and could even drain other Force artifacts. If it absorbed enough Force energy, it could use this power to obliterate entire planets. The staff was also immune to all Force powers and energy damage, including lightsabers, and if it should find itself in any trouble, it could even teleport itself out of danger. The Dark Staff could also possess the minds of individuals and utilize them as vessels for communication. Animals could be converted into Sith spawn, and corpses could be reanimated as dark-side-wielding zombies. The Dark Staff also had the ability to feed off its victim's death. On one occasion, it absorbed enough energy to destroy the planet of Oblis. However, it also prevented the souls of the dead from becoming one with the Force, instead feeding off the ghost-like entities that were trapped between this world and the next. The Dark Staff also had the ability to manipulate time to some extent. At some point during the Old Republic era, the Darkstaff came into the possession of Darth Revan. The artifact created a force storm, which caused a hyperspace wormhole that obliterated Revan's army. Caught in the eye of the storm, Revan was thrust hundreds of years into the future, finding himself amidst the Ruusan campaign at the end of the New Sith Wars. For the sake of this video's runtime, this is a heavily abridged version of events involving the Darkstaff. To learn more about the Darkstaff, look out for our upcoming video on every Darkside artifact, so make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Finally, we have the most powerful and destructive superweapon in the galaxy, and probably the universe. Designed by an unknown scientist on the planet of Shorkan, the intention of this device was to destroy the entire universe. The scientist was a radical nihilist who believed that the only way to give meaning to the universe was to end the current universe and trigger a new Big Bang. This device would accomplish this by destroying the planet of Shorkan in such a way that its fragments would travel through hyperspace to collide with other planets. In theory, this would set off a chain reaction which would lead to the destruction of all matter in the universe. A descendant of the scientist stated that he never quite became depressed enough to use his device. Thus, it was buried under Shorkan for years where it lay dormant. But shortly after the Battle of Endor, a Corellian conman accidentally activated the device. Luckily, it was quickly disarmed by Luke Skywalker, saving the entire universe. And that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this longer video, then make sure to check out this playlist where we deep dive into Star Wars Legends lightsaber lore. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, may the Force be with you.